Greetings and welcome to Everybody's Business, a podcast from the National Entrepreneur Center. I am your host, Jerry Ross, the president of the National Entrepreneur Center. But what makes this show work is all the people that are working on this show. Starting out with Christian Petkoff, who is our chief engineer, who makes it all happen, video and audio. Kevin Ross, who is the producer of the show. The lovely and talented Rachel Madsen, who is my sidekick here. But also the staff and sponsors of the National Entrepreneur Center, all who have been super supportive, been great advocates for the small businesses of our region. And State Farm Insurance, who is the sponsor of today's podcast. We couldn't do what we do without all the support that surrounds us here at Everybody's Business. And last but not least, you, the listeners. So we're here for you. We want to bring you the best in entrepreneurial tips and tactics and strategies, and really from people who are talking about their entrepreneurial journey, people who've been there and done that. So we're glad you're listening today, and let's get started. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great this morning. Thank you, Jerry. How are you?
Good. I love to see your smiling face, and we are socially distanced.
Yes.
But I can still feel the warmth and support coming our way until you decide that I need to be kept on time and between the guardrails, right?
Yep. That's what I'm here for.
That's right. So you see her smiling face, but I've seen another side when I start running over on time. Wanted to talk today about perseverance and persistence. I've been looking into that topic a little bit lately because the National Entrepreneur Center is really a testament to a community's persistence. This was just an idea back in 2003. And the community said, what if we put together all of these resources in one place? And lots of people said it wouldn't work because organizations wouldn't work well together. And sometimes they didn't.
Right.
Today we are benefiting from the fact that all of these organizations are collaborative. But that took time, that took persistence and perseverance to get through those tough times and finally get to the vision that the community had. And so this organization is a testament to perseverance. My career, many times, I wasn't the smartest in the room. I wasn't the most talented, but I was persistent. In fact, we sold $100 million worth of IBM performance software over the phone at one of the companies I worked for. And our job was really we knew the customer's pain. We knew our product would solve their pain. And what we did was we just would call them and say, hey, we've got something that's going to make you a hero. And we're going to send it to you. You try it out. And if it makes you a hero, like I said, you send me a check. Fair enough? And they would go, okay. And the product did exactly what it was supposed to. But occasionally I would run into somebody that didn't want to talk to me, wasn't going to talk to me. And I would get their receptionist or their assistant. And I knew that it was my job to share that information with those folks because I knew it would make their business better. And so I shared that with their assistants and their secretaries to say, I'm not a bad guy. But my job is to make sure that this can help your business run better. And so it's okay if he doesn't want to talk to me today, but you need to know it's my job to call you back. And so I'll be calling you back. And if he doesn't want to talk to me, you and I will become really good friends. And so there were people all over the country that I talked to that became really good friends. But they knew I was going to be persistent because I believed in my product. And finally, I would make it through to those people and they would say, you are the most persistent person I've ever met. But it resulted in us developing a long-term relationship and serving the customer. So have you ever had any of those things in your life where you've just had to require on persistence and perseverance?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think like most people, yes. Currently, I am trying to apply to medical school. Uh-huh. So many people will say that is a long journey in general, just the school in itself. But applying is, it's a journey,
it's
to
sure.
say the least.
Well, and that journey started years ago.
Yes, it starts very early. And I think, one of the fortunate things I had in my bucket, I guess, is that, I've always loved medicine. I've always loved science. I love people. That's one of the great things about the National Entrepreneur Center is I get to meet so many people.
Sure.
And speak with them. But, in regards to perseverance, I think it's one of those things that, you're tired, you had a bad day, things aren't going right. And you get frustrated, honestly. I mean, that's just being human. You get frustrated and you got to remember why you're doing it.
Right.
And so that's one of those things that keeps you going. And for me, medical school, that's where my journey hopefully will start.
That's right.
But I think perseverance is one of those things because for example, when you're applying to medical school, you need to do volunteering, you need to shadow, you need to have great grades, of course.
I've watched you many times at the Entrepreneur Center, study, even on your lunch and staying after work to hit the books. And so that's perseverance, even when you've had a tough day.
Yeah. And so, the grades are a huge thing. And so you just have to remember, why am I doing this? And that will keep you moving forward, honestly.
Sure. And as a business person, many times you say, this is really hard. And you may not be seeing the results yet. But even when you do achieve the goal, you start a new one. And so perseverance
doesn't stop there. Yeah,
it never
exactly.
stops.
It doesn't. And as you mentioned, you have to believe in yourself and know that you are capable in achieving these things. People have done it. You can do it. It starts, in here first.
Right.
But that's one of those things that, perseverance, you just have to keep going.
You just have to keep going.
You just have to keep going no matter what.
And as an entrepreneur, there were times when I thought, is this ever going to happen? And so you're out, you're pitching your product, you're selling the benefits of your product, you're talking to people, and you have to be around. You have to be around when the client decides that you're the answer. And so I especially here at the Entrepreneur Center, I always worry about the person that came in and they couldn't make it and they got out. And that was the day or the week before they would have gotten the phone call they'd been working on. And so perseverance is one of those things where you always have to look to the future and say, I believe it's going to happen. And sometimes that will get you through those low times or those frustrating times that you get into. But that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Because sometimes all those people go away and you just show up. You're the last one standing.
Yep.
And so I have that problem with contractors sometimes. I call 7 and the one that shows up is the one that gets the job. And these 6 other ones, they didn't show up. And so many times it's just staying alive long enough to show up and be there when your client needs you.
Yeah. Medicine in general and science and all that, you have to keep up with the medicine. You'll hear that a lot. But you also, you have to take care of yourself. You have to just keep going in the sense that bad grades, something went wrong. Yeah. Happened to me, happens to everyone.
Yeah.
But you have
Life
to know.
happens.
Life happens. It happens to everyone. It's just something that we all can share, that we all mess up. I make mistakes.
No.
But I got to learn. That's the point. So
I made a mistake once.
Yeah.
I thought I was wrong, but I was right.
Yeah.
I made sure that she didn't have anything to throw at me over there because as everyone knows here, I make mistakes regularly and I rely on my team to help me get out of trouble. Speaking of getting out of trouble, who's the guest today?
Today we have Michelle Assad. She's an international security consultant.
And a former CIA agent who broke cover and we've had her in to speak here at the Entrepreneur Center. Very talented, very motivational story from Michelle Rigby Assad. Her book is great. It's called Breaking Cover. As a speaker, we've had her inspire our entrepreneurial audiences. And so I'm really looking forward to what she has to share with us about her experience as a CIA agent, but also now as an international security consultant. So I'm really excited to have her as a guest on the show. So we're going to be right back with Michelle Rigby Assad.
The National Entrepreneur Center in Orlando, Florida has been around since 2003 and today is home to 14 business support organizations who have a single mission to help you grow your business. Through free business coaching, low-cost training, and valuable business connections, these 14 business support organizations assist thousands of entrepreneurs each year in starting, growing, and scaling their businesses. So why not visit the website at nationalec.org today or give us a call at 407-420-4848 to discover how you might take your business to the next level. And by the way, the National Entrepreneur Center is funded entirely through local sponsors, which include Wells Fargo, Orlando Utilities Commission, Regions Bank, and The Corridor, just to name a few. So let's get connected today and get growing. Check out our website at nationalec.org.
And we're back. You're listening to Everybody's Business, a podcast from the National Entrepreneur Center. I'm your host, Jerry Ross, and I am president of the National Entrepreneur Center, which is really a public-private partnership that's designed with you in mind, the entrepreneur and the small business owner. Lots of resources here for you to pick from, and you can reach those resources by visiting nationalec.org. Today's guest, you're going to really be interested in listening. She is an entrepreneur, an expert, and an author. So let me just read a small excerpt from her book jacket called Breaking Cover. The CIA is looking for walking contradictions. You must keep secrets, but skillfully persuade others to tell you theirs. You have to love your country, but willingly leave it behind for dangerous operations around the world. You need to live a double life, but be trustworthy enough to carry out the nation's most sensitive tasks. Michelle Rigby Assad was one of those people. Working undercover for the CIA, she served in treacherous areas around the Middle East, a woman leading some of the most highly skilled operatives on the planet. The threats were real, the missions were perilous, and deep inside, Michelle wondered, could she really do this job? How's that for making you want to read a little more? Michelle has been working throughout the Middle East in anti-terrorism and is with us today to share her journey from CIA officer to entrepreneur. She and her husband are entrepreneurs who consult on personal security, counter-terrorism, and foreign affairs to protect and serve and inspire others around the globe. Welcome, Michelle. It's so good to see you again.
Thanks, Jerry. Glad to be with you.
It's been a couple of years since we connected here at the National Entrepreneur Center.
Indeed.
So are you doing okay?
Yes, absolutely. Always okay.
How are you? How is the family dealing with the COVID situation that's been going on?
I would say when you put it into context for all the big challenges we've had in our lives, this one is a smaller challenge. I know it's very hard on many people, but I think we're so used to dealing with difficult, dicey situations that for us, it's just another one of those, you just make the best out of it. You try to turn it into a positive some way, shape, or form. So.
Right. Sometimes I call it an old computer term, noise in the channel. That you've got to get the data through and get it in, things to happen. But sometimes there's a lot of static involved and you just got to work through it.
Yes. You have to maintain your focus. Yeah.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about what you do today and your company and who the target market for those services are.
Yes. So actually, it's very multifaceted. So my husband and I have a consulting company, Intel Tech, and that helps American companies and European, actually all kinds of international companies doing business primarily in the Middle East, because it's a very unique place. It's a very hard place to do business. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could lose a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort.
Absolutely. Not only in dealing with the foreign language, but cultures, business practices, all of those things.
Setting up a company sounds so simple, but in a place like the Emirates or Saudi or Bahrain, it has its own unique challenges and requirements. And if you don't know how to do that, and then it's very tough. So we do a lot of consulting work, helping Americans and Europeans operate better in the Middle East. And then separate from that, I am a keynote speaker. So I do a lot of corporate events.
Which I've attended.
Yes, you have. That keeps me quite busy, as well as doing nonprofit speaking, pro bono stuff like that. And really my desire is to inspire other people with my strange and unique life stories. Yes. So for my speaking, I've had everything from Disney, Facebook, Google, insurance companies, banks, to small nonprofits and community-based organizations. So
Sure.
The whole gamut.
And so what led you, we're going to talk about your experience in the CIA, but what led you in that transition to pick that area to say, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so it is so hard to transition in any job. And when you are an entrepreneur, when you create things, every time you create something new, that is a challenging transition. But imagine when you're coming out of the CIA, where you've been undercover for 10 years, you've been moving opposite of the rest of the world. So everyone was connecting and going on social media and creating all these connections. We were like trying to be sure our name didn't come up in a Google search.
Right.
So when we left the agency after 10 really difficult years post 9/11, out of many reasons, but exhaustion being one of them.
Sure.
It was very hard because, Jerry, unlike most people, we didn't have a Rolodex, or we didn't have a huge social media following or people to help us transition into a new life. So it was extra special scary for us.
Well, and I liken that sometimes to people who are coming out of the military, where many times they've been working internationally. They're working on things that are specific to the military, and they get out and say, okay, how do I make this transition? Not only in terms and language, but then being able to translate what that work in the military would be like in corporate America.
Absolutely true. Or another, I know this is going to sound strange, but coming out of prison.
Yes.
Coming out of the CIA felt a whole lot like what it would be coming out of prison. You've been in a bubble. You've been in a strange world. You don't know how your skills are meaningful on the outside. I mean, I know what I did in the CIA, but I don't know how that translates to ordinary life.
Right.
And I don't have a resume. I can't even tell people what I've done for 10 years. So that's not very helpful.
Exactly. And if I do, it's classified. So I have to redact everything in my resume.
Correct. So I think that transition for us was so difficult, and it took a whole lot more time for us to establish connections that would bring business, right? So you have to put food on the table. You have to start somewhere. So for us, in order to make that transition, we, saved a lot of money, obviously, through working in war zones, and you have to make sure that fundamentally you have a roof over your head.
Sure.
And then we made that transition. We had a couple of people that were in the business world who knew what the agency did and who knew a little bit about our background and sent business our direction. And so that was, there were a couple key people that made that pivot, that great pivot for us, successful and helped it to occur, because otherwise, I don't know how we would have gotten any business. No one knew who we were.
Right. And I tell entrepreneurs many times, regardless of your planning, it usually takes twice as long as you think it's going to take, and it's going to cost about twice as much as you think it's going to take, because building a business from scratch in itself is difficult. Doing that without being able to share some of your experience and some of your background is even more difficult. If you're coming out of the military, if you're coming out of prison, if you're coming out of the CIA, those are all additional challenges that you have to overcome.
Absolutely. And it takes a very long time. So I felt called to speak. I felt called to be an inspirational and a keynote speaker. When I say the word called, it was like a spiritual calling for me. I don't know if people understand what that means, but it was something very guttural. But people don't want you to speak unless they're sure you have something to say. So really having a book is critical.
Right.
But you can't have a book until you've spoken. And so I was dealing with this impossible situation.
It is a catch-22. As a speaker myself, I had that same dilemma where people were saying, do you have a book? And I'm saying, well, you need to speak and share your experience and test some of that material before you write it down. But ultimately, I have heard you speak and I have read your book. And so both of those, I think, speak to not only your experience, your faith, and what you've been able to accomplish, but also that journey that many people are on in starting their own business, that it is difficult, it is stressful, but you have to start. And I say to people sometimes, where are you going to be in 5 years if you don't?
Right. So it's so overwhelming. And I cannot tell you how many times I just thought, Jerry, I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know how to get from point A to point B because I'm literally looking up. I'm in the valley and I'm looking at the top of the mountain. This is where I need to go. And there's a very simple strategy for making that happen. It is literally baby steps.
Yes.
Every single day, what can I do today to move myself in that direction? And I don't have to fly like Superman to get there. I don't have to run like an Olympic sprinter to get there. I simply need to do one thing every day to move myself in the right direction.
Right. 1 inch every day, and you're moving forward.
And perseverance. Literally, you just can't stop, even when you're frustrated, even when you are facing obstacles. Perseverance is the key. I don't think many times I've succeeded because I was smarter or more talented. I succeeded because I hung in there longer. I just won't give up. When I know I have to get somewhere, I will not give up until I get there. So perseverance is absolutely critical.
Getting up one more time than when you get knocked down.
Yes.
And so you're right. Sometimes it's just staying in there long enough. And by being in there long enough, you gather the experience and the exposure that you need for people to recognize what you do.
Right. I didn't jump into a talk at a big bank, a keynote address for vice presidents at a bank. What I did was I went to all my community groups and I spoke for free. There were 2 people in the room. I started out with 2 people, 5 people, 10 people, and I begged people to let me speak. And then it took many, many years. We're talking like 5 years. Finally, I'm in a room with 900, or I'm speaking at a big insurance company. Those things didn't happen overnight, but it was a very slow and deliberate build.
Right. And it's developing a plan. Surrounding yourself with people that can get you what you need to make that plan happen, but also continuing in your experience in security and in those things that you became the expert in. Because a lot of times you say, so what, why you? And that goes back to that you have something unique and you have an experience that you can share that is unique for people, but also close enough to what other people are doing that they can relate.
Exactly. So I think I kept telling people, if you give me a chance, I'll show you there is so much substance here. I have so much experience doing things that people are fascinated by. Like everyone wants to hear about CIA, counter-terrorism, dealing with insurgents and terrorists and bad guys. But everything that I experienced is not necessarily saying something new. It's about perseverance and determination and diversity and all these things, but it's telling it in a different way.
From a different perspective.
From a totally different perspective, yeah.
And we are going to talk about that. We are going to tell people about that, but not right now. We're going to get to that right after this break, so stay tuned. Hi, this is Jerry Ross coming to you from the National Entrepreneur Center. I'm coming to you from my home office because our staff as well is working remotely. But we're working remotely to serve the small businesses in Central Florida. If you have a need, if you want to get connected, there are many ways to do that with the National Entrepreneur Center. So we are still answering your calls. We are still answering your email. In fact, we've been pretty busy these last few months, even working remotely to launch the new online learning platform in partnership with the Lonely Entrepreneur out of New York City, who had about 300 learning modules of content readily available. And we've made a partnership to make that available to you for free. while you're working remote. So while you may be home working alone, you don't have to be alone, because the National Entrepreneur Center and our 14 resident organizations have one mission, and that's to help you grow your business. And we're back. You're listening to Everybody's Business, the podcast from the National Entrepreneur Center. I'm your host, Jerry Ross, and today I am speaking with Michelle Rigby Assad, who was a former CIA agent and is an entrepreneur today. Michelle, let's talk about your CIA experience. You know, everyone wants to hear about how that happened. So how did you go from Mount Plymouth, Florida, to a CIA agent working in the Middle East?
Yeah, so I grew up in Central Florida, a small community. I didn't know much about the world, but what I did was right after high school, I started traveling abroad for mission trips or for study abroad programs. And that took me to Egypt and Russia and Ukraine, and then Egypt again, and Israel and the West Bank. And so all these little steps kind of built within me this hunger for foreign affairs and this hunger to understand other cultures. That brought me to Georgetown to working on my master's degree in Arab studies. And while I was working on my degree, I basically started going through a very long, and as you read in the book, super rigorous process to get into the agency, which was obviously full of obstacles, like always, and rejection. But eventually, long story short, both my husband and I made it into what we call the National Clandestine Service. So it's the part of the CIA in which you get sent abroad and you're sent undercover to work as an intelligence officer, recruiting sources and gathering intelligence for policymakers and military and whoever else needs that intelligence.
So from starting your travels abroad, and what I found is that when you come back a different person.
Without a doubt.
Realizing that, wow, there's this whole other world out there that may view things differently, may conduct business differently, that sometimes we're in our bubble, we don't even know exists until we go visit it. And then we come back and say, oh my gosh, there is so much more for me to learn.
Yes, indeed. And I think it's so funny. I was so American as a teenager when I went on my first trip. I just turned 18 years old, and we were going to do volunteer work in an orphanage in Egypt. And I was like, oh, these kids, I'm just going to love on these kids, and it's just going to help change their lives. And that's just so silly, because what it really ended up changing the most was me.
Right.
Fundamentally, on such a different level, I understood I was not the center of the universe.
And not all maps had the United States in the middle.
Right in the center. And that there's these very, very different cultures. And it really helped me to have a hunger to understand people and cultures that were so different and make some sense of that.
Right. And so how do you go from doing mission trips and in this small town in Ohio, in Florida, to being recruited?
So it's so interesting. I really wasn't sure. I just literally applied to every single job opportunity.
I've been there, done that.
You got to do whatever you got to do, right? So I was completely shocked 3 weeks later when I got a call from a CIA recruiter saying, we're quite interested in you because you have a master's degree in Arab studies. You've done so much travel in the Middle East and around the world. And we'd like to maybe consider you for a position. And Jerry, I didn't think I was CIA material. I wasn't sure what was CIA material. I had no idea.
There's not a job description out there that's posted publicly.
There's a little bit, and you look at it and you're like, I have no idea. Like,
exactly.
So I think what's interesting is I never envisioned myself in anything like that role, but it turns out I happen to be very perfect for it without even knowing it. So being voraciously interested in foreign cultures, being a person, which I later learned, very empathetic, and I can read body language well, and I can connect with people who are so different from me. Turns out that all those things that I didn't know could be job skills, I thought they were life skills, but they were critical to becoming a really good intelligence officer. But it took me years to actually discover that in the CIA.
What was the hardest part of your time at the CIA?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. What do I choose? Certainly living in really, really dangerous places. That was just a level of stress it's hard to explain unless you've really been in war zones and very places, a great deal of instability. There was the internal pressures of working with people who didn't think I was capable as a female. So I think those were the two hardest challenges for me.
Was it hard to be away from home?
Absolutely.
Hard to move regularly?
Move every year. If you're lucky, you might get 2 years in a location, but we rarely ever did. And that's just a lot of constant trauma, constant instability. So I would say that I'm probably very good at handling stress because and this is how you grow. You handle greater and greater amounts of stress. And then you get to a point where really you're so capable because you've allowed that stress to develop something strong in you.
And so how did you handle it?
So many people have asked me that question in a really long time. I didn't know how to answer that. And after thinking about it for a while, I said, I think the difference is the ability to focus in the midst of chaos. So you've got a big operation going on and you have like 100 things to think about. It's your job before your operation to think about the 1,000 things that could go wrong and to potentially plan for them.
Right.
But when you're in the middle of that operation, you can't think, oh, this could go wrong and that could go. You have to focus. This is what I'm doing. This is what I have to accomplish. And your brain goes straight to that point and focuses there. And that, I think, is the difference.
And that sounds like much like what an entrepreneur goes through. Is before you make that jump, you think of the 1,000 things that can go wrong. But once you're in the air off the diving board, you're focused on the water and I'm about to hit the water and how am I going to make that work? And so I think you're right. And being an entrepreneur, running your own business is filled with stress. Some of it you can't anticipate, but when it's time to make payroll, or make the house payment, it becomes very real. And there's nothing like that kind of a stress to make you focus on who's going to be my next customer.
Oh, absolutely. And what more do I need to do to move this forward? There's so many areas of discomfort that as an entrepreneur, I constantly am up against. Social media is very uncomfortable for me. We were hiding in the shadows for so much of our lives. And then suddenly you're in the spotlight, in the limelight. That's deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And obviously less uncomfortable over time. If you search me online, you'll see all the stuff I've done. That just goes to show how you can grow in areas that were really hard for you.
And you can adapt.
And you can. It doesn't mean that it's less painful. Like every time I'm trying to do a video or I'm trying to do, I am still like, oh, this is not fun. But I do it anyway because I know that's how I've got to move forward. That's how I'm going to get ahead. I have to do things that are sometimes painful in order to get the amount of gigs that I need and make the connections I need to make, get my expertise out there.
It's not always comfortable, but if it was comfortable and easy, everyone would do it.
That's right.
So was it hard to leave? Was it hard to leave the CIA and say, I'm out? Or was it one of those things that you said, it's time, I'm out of here?
All the above.
All the above. I've got that.
Yes. I tell people it was so bittersweet. You think I just spent 10 years of my life consumed by the CIA. There was nothing outside of CIA. There was nothing outside of our work for 10 years. It was working holidays and weekends. It was wasn't seeing family very often, but maybe once a year. It was working so hard, I probably will never work that hard the rest of my life. But at the same time, I had such a palpable sense that I had to take this step. And I'll never forget, Jerry, as I was walking out of the CIA on my last day. It was such an emotional moment for me. I thought, wow, this is it. I'm walking out and I'll never walk back in again. And I handed the guard my badge, my CIA badge that I've had for 10 years. And I just like my heart in my throat. I just like walked out the doors and thought, okay, God, here we go. Terrifying and exciting all at the same time.
I've been there. I left a software company at one point, and we were moving to Florida, and there was an ice storm, and my scraper broke that I was trying to scrape my windshield, and so I took my glove off and put my hand on the windshield to melt the ice, and I drove home looking through my handprint, going, "What did I just do? I've quit my job. I'm moving to a new state. Okay, God." Here we are. And so there's nothing like those moments to make you say, I'm going to rely on my faith here.
And that's a moment in your life you'll never forget. It's
Exactly.
so just, yeah.
Exactly. Well, don't forget that we're going to come back and talk about your book. And we're going to take a minute here and hear from our sponsors. We'll be back right after this.
The National Entrepreneur Center has made it easy for you to learn business principles from anywhere at any time with NEC Online. As a supplement to all the great resources at the National Entrepreneur Center, you now have free access to over 300 learning modules that you can access at any time. Thanks to the generous sponsorship of Wells Fargo and our partnership with The Lonely Entrepreneur, you can access this powerful online learning platform for free. Learn on your own time and at your own pace. Access product reviews and participate in weekly group coaching opportunities. Right now, the only thing missing is you. So check out our online learning platform today at nationalec.org. That's nationalec.org. Did I mention it's free?
We're back, and our guest today is Michelle Rigby Assad, a former CIA agent that is an entrepreneur today. Michelle, I want to talk about your book. So I do have it. I have a copy.
Yay!
And I read it. Tell me about how the book came about.
Yeah, so I was actually still in the agency when I felt a very strong calling that I needed to share my story to inspire other people. And that I actually started writing the book the last couple of years in the agency.
That had to be pretty scary for the CIA.
Well, they didn't know yet.
I'm just asking for a friend.
I was actually taking quite a risk because the agency doesn't have to drop your cover. So to be able to do that, to be able to say, I work for the CIA is a big deal.
Yes.
But I felt like I was so certain of this calling that I just started. Turns out CIA had no problem with me dropping cover, and my husband, thank God. And of course, they eventually had to review the manuscript and make sure there wasn't any classified material in it. Nobody's lives would be endangered by putting it out. And they did. And so, Jerry, this is another one of those situations when perseverance is required.
You bet.
I found out that the easiest part is actually writing a book. The hardest part is getting it published.
Absolutely. I hear you.
Since I had no social media platform, I was like, who are you? And why would we publish an unknown quantity such as yourself? So it took 7 years. But it's a best-selling book. It's done so well, and it's, thank God, it just makes me feel so fulfilled that it's inspired so many people to get out of their comfort zone, to do the hard things in life, and to understand that oftentimes it's suffering and rejection that gets us where we need to go and creates a real expertise within us.
Sometimes it's the fire that makes the steel hard, you know,
It's
and
true.
so that perseverance and rejection. Not only what I felt from reading it was, here was someone that said, I don't even know that I can do this, goes on to do this for 10 years, and then is able to talk about it. When so many people say, oh my gosh, that's, you've achieved this goal, but to talk about it in such a real way, to say, I had my doubts too.
Yes. In fact, I thought it would not be an impactful book unless I shared with my audience that I was full of doubt. I was completely intimidated. And the reason why that's important is people tend to look at you once they hear a sparkling resume and they say, CIA, counter-terrorism, author, lived in all these countries, traveled the world. You are different. You must be extra special courageous, when in fact, that's not the case.
No. And your story of the airport in Cairo, you need to share that real quickly. because I read that and I had a similar experience in the Cairo airport. And I thought, yes, I'll share it with you, but you first.
Okay, so this is another one of those situations where you're in the middle of it and you think, I cannot believe this is happening to me right now. But my husband, Joseph, prior to working at the agency, did human rights work. And there are many places in the world where that's a very dangerous endeavor.
That is frowned upon, to say the least.
Yes. And so I had already arrived in Egypt to visit family, and Joseph arrived on a different flight coming from a different place. And I was waiting with his family at the airport for him. And I saw a couple people come out of the International Arrivals Hall that I knew had been on his flight. So even though Egyptian information is never any good, I knew the flight arrived. So I knew he was there. And I waited and waited and waited for him to exit the arrivals hall. And I got very nervous because I was concerned that he could just disappear, which has happened to people before.
That's right.
Especially under Hosni Mubarak, the former regime that's no longer in power. And my deepest concern was like, I've got to let the Egyptians know that I'm here and I know he's landed. That will offer him some sort of protection. I don't want them to suddenly scoop him out of the airport, take him to an unknown jail cell, and then I may or may not hear from him again. So I got very nervous. I got very scared for his well-being. And after about 3 hours went by and still no Joseph, that's when I almost like mama bear came out. So I decided, yeah, you guys see me, I'm smiley, I'm friendly. Pushed against the wall though.
There is a mama bear.
There's another side. So what I ended up doing is taking my American passport and I pulled it out and I approached the guard at the doors, in front of the doors. And I said, my husband is inside. You are holding him inside. I'm an American citizen. He's an American citizen. And if you don't let him out in 10 minutes, I will go in there and I will get him myself. And I'm like, oh,
where did that come from?
What the heck? I knew Arab culture very well. So thankfully it kicked in. I knew what to say, how to say it. And he's like, Madame, you can't walk in here. You can't do that. It's against the law. It's against whatever. And I said, I know. So you better get him out because I will cause an international incident if you don't. And then I was like, oh, I cannot believe I'm doing this. I am going to cause an international incident. And so about 5 minutes goes by and he's like talking to his colleagues frantically, like communicating to them. There's this crazy lady out here and she's making all these threats. And then of course I'm thinking, oh God, I hope Joseph appears because I don't want to walk into this airport illegally
and get arrested.
Yeah, there's that. And so 10 minutes goes by and I walked up to the gentleman. I said, look, I hope you have the number to the US embassy because you haven't produced my husband and I'm coming in to get him. No, madame, mish mumkin, it's impossible. I said, watch me. And I took that passport and I put it over my head and I pushed the doors open, or they opened, and I pushed past him and I started walking through the Egyptian airport.
Not really knowing where you were going.
And as I'm doing that, I'm like, where am I going? What am I doing? Where's Joseph? I have no idea. I have no clue, but I'm walking like I am a woman, like on a mission, and I know what I'm doing. And my heart is pounding out of my chest. And I'm like, what the heck? And of course, I see all these Egyptian guards with guns and everybody like coming at me. And then finally way across the airport, I see Joseph. And they freaked out. They'd been keeping him to the side and in questioning him and just giving me a hard time. They finally put his passport in his hand. We ran to each other like in a movie in slow motion, met in the middle of the airport.
Raise the crescendo of the music.
Yeah.
the lighting from above.
What are you doing in here? I said, I'll tell you later.
It sounds like a Hallmark movie.
Seriously.
So fade to black, run the credits.
Yes, exactly. So thank God I got him back. He wasn't disappeared, but it was a very scary moment.
But that's a moment of not only perseverance, but saying, I am on a mission and I've got to have the courage to step out of that. And so not only in a foreign country, but in starting your business and persevering in whatever it is that you're led to do in your life. So getting it published, talking about the book, getting the approvals to do it, all of those things seem like, it was meant to be, or it wouldn't be.
It was absolutely meant to be, for sure.
So are you working on a second one?
I have worked on a big project.
Okay.
Might turn it into a book at some point. But during this period of COVID, I finally got to do the thing I've been wanting to do for 5 years.
Okay.
How many people in your audience have a project on the back burner, right? And you think, if I can't do it now, when am I going to ever do it?
Right.
So it was creating online content for a special course, which I am super passionate about. And that comes straight from my CIA training and experience, which is how to spot a liar and deconstruct their claims.
Interesting. This is the webinar that I set in on.
Yes. It's a
I
little
love that.
taste of that. Yes.
And so you've been working on developing a whole course on that.
That's correct. And the reason why I am so gifted in that area is because, contrary to public opinion, in the CIA, it is not hard to collect information. What is hard is figuring out what's good and what's crap, because there's a lot of crap, I can tell you. We get fed a lot of bad information by fabricators, embellishers, people who want to get paid, who really don't have access to information that we need. And so really what the CIA becomes is a massive sorting agency. So you have to learn very quickly as an intelligence officer how to figure out if that person is lying or if that person is telling the truth. Is the information they're giving you accurate and helpful or not? And you got to do it very quickly. And so I became an expert at sorting through massive amounts of information to identify the nuggets that we needed.
So, not to spoil any of the good stuff, but can you give our audience a quick training on how to spot a liar and how to know if the information is good?
So these are my two big major pointers, and this is helpful for people in business without a doubt. So there's a profile of a liar that's my favorite because they're just so ubiquitous, and it's called the fast talker.
Okay.
They're the person that you meet that comes in like the snake oil salesman, and they have they talk so fast. They overwhelm you with information about how cool they are, how amazing they are, how great their company is, how great their product is. I know you've interacted with them. You probably can't get a word in edgewise, right?
And all the people they know.
Oh, especially all the influential, important people they know. So if you see a fast talker, that is literally a profile. And you see that profile and you know right away that you need to absolutely vet every single thing coming out of their mouth, because it's probably not. They're probably not the kind of person that you want to work with,
that you want to hang around with.
Watch the fast talker.
Watch the fast talker. So if I'm saying, hey, we got Michelle Rigby Assad, we're talking here today from the National Entrepreneur Center. We got her on the podcast and we know a lot of people are listening. You got to wonder about that guy.
You do. And you see them all the time. They're everywhere.
We'll talk very slowly now.
The whole point in talking fast is you don't give the person you're talking to any time to consider the information. The idea is to overwhelm you with so much information that people just accept what you're selling.
Gotcha.
Okay, so number 2, when you're looking at a potential vendor or partnering with someone, a potential partner, you're making these business decisions all the time. If you're talking to someone and you can't ever get them to answer your questions, okay, so is this person that I really want to do business with? And you might ask a question about their business experience or where they've had success or where they've had failings and they've learned from it. You have a series of questions that you have to use to vet them, right?
Right.
If you ask those questions 100 times and you walk away from those meetings and you still don't know the answer, that is the biggest red flag that you will get.
That
Avoidance.
They've avoided.
Avoidance and deflection.
Got it.
Right? So an honest business person wants to answer your vetting questions, wants to make sure you feel comfortable, wants to share their experience with you, is forthcoming with the details. Those that don't want you to know who they are or want you to dig into the product or the service they're selling, they will not answer your questions. And they will spin you around in circles until you're so confused and you don't even know what's going on. That is the biggest red flag that you will see as a business person. And you want to avoid that.
So you heard it first right here on Everybody's Business. We're going to be right back. We're talking with Michelle Rigby Assad, former CIA agent who is now an entrepreneur. More to come. Don't go away.
Looking to start or develop your business? Get educated. Get coached. Get financed. The National Entrepreneur Center. Be in business for yourself, not by yourself.
Welcome back to Everybody's Business, a podcast from the National Entrepreneur Center. Michelle, fascinated by your background and your experience. So let's talk about your experience as an entrepreneur. What was the hardest thing that you addressed as becoming an entrepreneur?
It was having no foundation of business in the United States. That was the hardest part. So you come
They don't
from
teach this in college.
no, they don't
They do
teach it in
now.
college. No, true. But so coming back from abroad to the United States, having no real contacts here. And so a business thrives on contacts. And that for me was the hardest part, was generating everything from scratch.
And so how'd you do that?
One little baby step at a time. I didn't know how to do any of that. I also didn't know all of this technology that was out there. So I made friends with people who were several steps ahead of me. And I said, well, how did you get from point A to point B? And I had lots of friends and mentors to like grab my arm and say, you got to go that direction. Here's how you can get there.
Sure.
You know, it sounds very cheesy and simple, but for me, it was just like building it from the ground up. And it was a time consuming, and it was not a quick process.
Did you have any mentors, any special help from people that you say, that's where it changed?
Not really.
Yeah.
You know, there was no magic potion. There was no magic thing that someone said to me. They literally, well, probably it was my sister. She said, literally, what can I do today? She's like, Michelle, it's too much to think of all these things you have to do in order to get your book published. Just every single day, how can I move this forward? And I think that for me was something that changed my frame of mind and took a lot of that extra anxious anxiety out of my head and said, you do have control. Every day, do something. Do one thing.
Well, and that goes back to the focus, you know, of saying there's a lot of things I could worry about, but what can I do today to move myself forward? And if you do enough of those little steps, you get there.
Yes. And I think it's good to not have expectations of overnight success. It just doesn't work like that in the real world.
Right. And if it does happen and that lightning strikes, that's one. And
Right.
there are millions of entrepreneurs. And so a lot of times people want to focus on that success story or that overnight success.
But the truth of the matter is, when you talk to the people who have overnight success, what you'll really learn is that was 10 years.
20 years.
Yeah, exactly. So what looks to the outsider is, wow, that was easy for you. Usually wasn't.
Right. And sometimes people will talk about my entrepreneurial journey. And I say, but I wasn't doing that by myself in a vacuum. My wife was working and she was providing benefits and income while I was able to take that risk. And I ran into great clients and great mentors along the way. So this is a team sport. It's not something you do by yourself. So you're lucky to have your sister give you that focus. What would be your advice to someone who's either starting a business today or in business, has gone through the COVID shutdown and is now emerging to say, how do I recover?
I think the thing is taking power back into your hands by not, again, it's all your focus, right? So you can focus on, I can't do these 20 things. Then you go, okay, that's established. What can you do?
Right.
So how can I pivot creatively to do something different? Because I can't continue as I was. And so here's a moment for us to really get our creative juices flowing about how we all move forward. And I think it's good. It's almost good to have a timeout, like a forced timeout.
Yes.
Yeah.
That we're going to be home and have time to think, not have a full schedule all the time, that you say, maybe this is the time for reflection and what else could I be doing? And it's been amazing to see some of the creative pivots that businesses have made.
Right. And then you see someone who's doing well. I'm like such an intelligence officer. It stays with you forever. You don't have to leave. I ask people 1,000 questions. I do. I find we don't do that enough.
Right.
How did you get there? How did you manage that? How did you achieve that? What steps did you take? Like, people want to share. Humans want to be like, oh, you're asking me for advice? They love giving advice. Sure. And so I'll say, like, how did you do that? And that's been very helpful to me.
And the other part is then listening to the answer. You know, sometimes people ask a question and they're off to the next question before they get an answer. And so I think that is incredibly important to learn from others.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk about your life journey. Now, we established you grew up in Mount Plymouth, Florida, small town. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a ballerina.
Yeah.
Then I wanted to be a rockette until my mom told me I'd never be tall enough, which broke my heart.
Oh, I bet.
And then I decided maybe I wanted to be a pediatrician. And then by high school, I kind of decided I want to be a pharmacist because I worked in a pharmacy as a pharmacy assistant.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And I went to college initially as a pre-med student with pharmacy in my future. And it's so funny because obviously I wasn't a pharmacist. So
exactly. That wore off at some point.
Yeah. As soon as I started doing all the study abroad programs as a student and the mission trips and all of that, it just kind of made it very clear, like, Jerry, a lot of times in life, you don't know where you're going, but you can say it's not that.
Right.
And even that wisdom, that's some of the most helpful wisdom in the world.
It is of not only knowing what you want to do, but what you don't want to do.
And what you can't do or what you're not good at or
right.
Yes. And so you think I have to go in this direction. And all at that point I could tell you is that I'm going to be doing something very internationally focused. And I used to tell people, even in college, it's so funny, I am going to be a bridge. Like, I see myself as like bridging Arab culture and American culture or Western culture. And I didn't know how that would manifest. Right. But interestingly enough, in the CIA, you're dealing with Arabs and Middle Easterners. And as someone who has steeped myself in learning Arab culture, being able to be a bridge was what enabled me to do a really good job. Sure. And it's funny how that played out. I could have obviously never imagined being a spy. Like, what?
Right.
What?
I want to grow up and be a spy mom.
Yeah. Who does that?
No one. I tell you. Well, maybe there is one. So if I told you it's confidential, I would have to kill you. So, who is the biggest influence on your youth and your young formative years?
I think I would say my mom, because while you see me as being a very adventurous person, learning and doing new things, that's so opposite of the core of how I started out.
Yes.
As a little kid, I was shy. I was terrified of getting on a stage, which dance classes and dancing got me out of that. Sure. But my mom was always pushing me forward. Like, you can do this. I'm like, I don't know. Yes, you can. There were several things in high school, I remember, where I wanted to opt out of a leadership opportunity. And she said, if you don't go after that because you think you're going to fail, then you are a loser. I was like, oh God.
You've already failed.
That's not what a teenager wants to hear. Shut up.
No, especially a competitive one.
Yes, right. So my mom knew how to push me forward at very critical times. And then after I got married, it was my husband who kind of stepped in, and he at the CIA would always be saying, are you kidding? You need to be the one and debriefing these terrorists. You need to be the one handling these guys because you're so good at this, things that I wasn't sure I was capable of. So I have always been very grateful to have in my life cheerleaders. who
Sure.
understood what I was capable of and were always encouraging and pushing me forward.
And calling you to bring that out
Yes.
instead of not exercising that muscle.
Yeah, I might not have. Now I have a hunger to do that, but
I enjoyed in the book hearing your briefing of the Saudi folks that you were visiting to brief, and they were a little upset that a woman from the United States entered.
yeah, it's interesting. It's been hard to be constantly underestimated. And so you have to figure out ways as a female, especially working in the Middle East around that. So here I am in a scenario where I'm training these Arab intelligence officers. So I won't say where they're from,
Sure.
but the idea of this young woman coming in from America to teach, Middle Eastern intelligence officers something, who the heck are you?
Right.
And so what I realized was I have to establish my bona fides immediately in this meeting. And so while as a Southerner and raised in the United States, you're taught, don't tell people that you don't wear that on your shoulder. You don't tell people you're great. You don't advertise, right? I wasn't taught that, but I learned in that moment, you have to advertise or they're never going to listen to a word that you say. And so I understood their culture well enough in order to say, here's the things I have done. And I named them off. And I knew that they were things that intimidated those guys. I had served in countries that intimidated them. I had served in countries that made them scared because of whatever was going on. So I knew that if I could lay that out, I could establish my bona fides, I could get respect. And as soon as I did that, Jerry, a couple minutes intro, I saw them sit up in their chairs. I saw the grimaces disappear from their faces because they said, wow, okay, all right, maybe she does have something to share. And it changed the complete tone of that meeting from one, like, who the heck are you? And how dare you walk in here and have, as a female, something to tell us, to, wait a minute, you actually do have something to share with us that's helpful.
And I think that's a lesson that women entrepreneurs over the last 20 years have been learning. And moving forward to say, I am in business and I am respected for what I've accomplished. And so I think that dynamic has happened not only internationally, but here in America as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you can do it not in an arrogant or braggadocio way, but you still can do that with humility. There's a way to present yourself that establishes your bona fides, but still doesn't threaten the other party. And that's a very diplomatic approach to business.
For a diplomat.
Yeah.
So you and using body language to read your audience as well. So great lessons for entrepreneurs everywhere. Let me ask you a few closing questions. What keeps you up at night?
Ideas, how I can inspire other people. How can I help other people? That literally keeps me awake at night.
If you could talk to someone in history, who would you talk to?
Abraham Lincoln or Winston Churchill.
Yeah. And what would you ask them?
Such incredible, great men who were on the precipice of world disaster and were the threads that held it together. And I would just want to know, how did you persevere? Did you ever have moments of complete fear where you thought, we're going to lose this thing? And then how did you keep going?
Right. I would love to hear the answer as well. So let me wrap up. I want to be a good steward of your time. Let me wrap up with some personal preferences of yours. What's your favorite color?
Ooh, anything bright. I love
Anything
bright colors.
bright.
Yes.
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, goodness.
Pressure's on.
Oh my gosh. Of course,
Survey
I can't think of a
says.
single movie. What kind of intelligence officer am I?
We'll come back to that. Are you a coffee or a tea drinker?
Coffee. Absolutely.
What's your favorite dinner? If you were going to cook dinner tonight and say, it's my favorite, what would that be?
Any kind of pasta. I'm very, very Italian in that sense.
I'm a
Pasta.
I'm a spaghetti guy.
There you go.
I ate my way through Italy testing spaghetti bolognese.
I love it. Perfect.
Favorite cartoon character?
Oh my goodness. The Wily Rabbit. Wily Rabbit.
I'm searching for wabbits. What's your favorite season of the year?
Spring.
What do you do when you're not working?
reading or working out.
Would you rather give a speech or plan the event?
Oh, give a speech.
Beer or wine?
Vino.
Vino.
Vino
Red or
all
white?
the way. Both.
Both? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for your time and letting us learn about your journey, but also share more about you. If people want to get a hold of you or to connect and get your book, how would they do that?
So in terms of getting a hold of Breaking Cover, wherever you normally buy your books, you can go online, Amazon or wherever. There's the audio version, soft copy, hard copy. I read it. So if you have the audio version, you'll hear my voice. You can also download it. If people want to contact me, I have a website, my 3-part name, Michelle Rigby Assad, or you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, Michelle Rigby Assad. And
so people can find you now.
Now they can.
Because of Breaking Cover.
That's right. Now I'm legit, right? Got a book, I'm legit.
Thank you so much for your time. Will you come back and talk to us in the future?
Absolutely, Jerry. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time, and we appreciate you sharing with our entrepreneurs today. We'll be right back.
If you have a business question that you would like to have answered, or if you would like to suggest a topic for discussion, we would love to hear from you. Just email Jerry at hello@nationalec.org. That is hello@nationalec.org.
Wow. I could speak to her for the next 3 hours to try to get that. Great information from her experience, but also what a great thing she's doing.
No, yeah. I jotted a few things down from your guys' conversation, and she is so worldly. It's just unbelievable.
So what did you write down?
First thing was ability to focus in chaos. I thought that was powerful. I mean, certain things that you're just like, oh, I should have thought of that.
Right.
But yeah, that was something that was stuck for sure.
You know what's interesting about that is I think of doctors.
Right.
And doctors focus in the midst of chaos. I see blood and I get woozy, and
I get excited.
Which is not a good thing.
Say that.
But it's that ability to focus in chaos would have to be required for her background and what she's done. But it's required for every business because as I say, in every chaos, there's opportunity. And yet it's opportunity for those that can focus and say, I need to tune out some of the noise and focus on how we move forward. So that was a good takeaway, I thought. I also enjoyed her courage to take on the folks at the airport.
Yes. So I'm single, but if I had a husband, I don't know if I'd go. I'm just kidding. But that takes a lot of courage.
Okay,
I couldn't imagine.
You hear that out there. You're on your own.
That takes a lot of courage. And I think it was really important also that she mentioned that she knew the culture, which we all should try to be more open with. But look what that did for her. You know, she was open in learning the culture, and she was able to use it to her advantage.
Well, and she's very humble. But there is a 2020 special out there on YouTube. I think you can find it, where she and her husband went into Karkush, Iraq, and helped Christian refugees escape ISIS and got them relocated to another country. Very dangerous, very difficult. But it's that kind of courage and focus that is really amazing and quite an accomplished guest that we had today.
Oh, yes, she was. And the 2 little snips of how to identify a liar. I had to jot that too.
And so those are things for me to avoid, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She will keep me honest for sure. That was fascinating as far as in business, knowing how to discern if someone is giving you the honest answer and giving you the truth or whether they're leading you on. That can save you a lot of heartache in business. So those are all tools and tips that we look for to bring out in our broadcasts of Everybody's Business, that we want to equip you with practical and tactical tools and ideas to use today. Not form a committee, not use them next week, but tools that you can use today. And we heard a whole toolbox today from Michelle. Want you to know that this podcast is for you. And so if you have questions, email your questions at hello@nationalec.org. That's hello@nationalec.org. We'd be happy to answer your questions here online. We can answer them via email. If you're more comfortable, you can call us at 407-420-4848. And we'll take on your questions and we'll answer them here on the podcast, or we'll get back to you directly. Wherever you're listening to us, you can find a local small business development center that will help you. That's their mission. SCORE, who are volunteers who have business experience that will help you anywhere that you're listening to the podcast. You can get help. It's a phone call or an email away. So don't feel like you've got to do this by yourself. And we will look forward to you joining us again for Everybody's Business. And remember, enjoy life. This is not a dress rehearsal.